WNBA finals. And so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments. And so all I'll say is just, it's obviously.
They say that in professional sports, no single player is ever bigger than the league itself. The logo comes first, the rules come second, and the commissioner is supposed to keep the balance. But history shows that every system eventually meets a disruptor. In the WNBA, that disruptor has a name, and it is Caitlin Clark. Over the last year, a quiet power struggle has been unfolding between the league's old guard and the new era Clark represents. What started as tension has now erupted into open conflict. After a major announcement involving NBC and the future of media rights, insiders say WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is furious behind closed doors. This was not just another media deal. It was a shift in control. Executives are coming to terms with a reality they tried to avoid. They no longer control their most valuable asset. This story is bigger than wins and losses. It is about money, influence, and the consequences of underestimating a superstar. The league believed it could slow her rise and keep her in line. Instead, those decisions accelerated something far more dangerous. Caitlin Clark no longer needs permission or protection. The uncomfortable truth has surfaced. Caitlin Clark does not need the WNBA to thrive. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. And with NBC now firmly in her corner, the commissioner is watching her authority slip away. To understand why the commissioner is reportedly unraveling behind the scenes, we have to start with scale. Not headlines. Not press conferences. Scale. The kind of scale that quietly shifts power without asking permission. The WNBA's media rights deal with NBC was announced as a historic victory, roughly $2.2 billion spread over more than a decade. On paper, it looked like validation. A moment the league could point to and say it had finally arrived. Commissioner Cathy Engelbert stepped forward as the face of that success, presenting it as proof that her long-term strategy had worked. But what mattered wasn't the number. It was what NBC planned to do with it. Because when executives invest billions, they don't invest in ideals. They invest in outcomes. And outcomes require faces. NBC did not commit that money because it believed in abstract growth. It committed because it believed in one measurable, repeatable draw. Caitlin Clark. Quietly, the conversation inside network boardrooms was never about league parity or collective branding. It was about ratings certainty. Clark represented something the WNBA had never possessed before. Predictable mass attention. That reality immediately put the commissioner in an impossible position. Her public philosophy had always emphasized equality. 144 roster spots. One ecosystem. No singular star elevated above the rest. NBC's philosophy was the opposite. They treated the league like a star-driven product. And by doing so, they effectively removed the commissioner from the decision-making chain. Engelbert could not dictate coverage. She could not redirect focus. She could not tell NBC to feature different teams if the data did not support it. The network followed numbers, not narratives. That was the first fracture. The deal signaled something profound. Control had shifted from the league office to the broadcasters. And the broadcasters had already chosen their centerpiece. But that was only the beginning. Because almost immediately after the NBC announcement, the league was confronted with a second, more personal challenge. The off-season experiment known as the Unrivaled League. This was positioned as a landmark moment for player empowerment. A winter league created by stars, funded aggressively, marketed as a sisterhood and an alternative revenue stream. The concept was strong. The talent pool was real. But from the start, everyone understood one thing. Without Caitlin Clark, it would struggle to break through. Reports suggest Unrivaled made a historic push. 7 figures in salary. Ownership equity. Incentives designed to remove hesitation. The expectation inside league circles was simple. Clark would accept. She would play the role. She would help lift the collective. That assumption revealed how badly the power dynamics had been misread. Clark declined. No counteroffer. No hesitation. Just no. The rejection landed like a shockwave. Because it was not about money. It was about independence. By turning down Unrivaled, Clark sent a message that could not be walked back. She was no longer interested in serving as an engine for systems that did not protect her. She did not need supplemental leagues to build value. Her value already existed. That decision exposed something the commissioner could not afford to admit. Caitlin Clark could walk away from structures designed to contain her. And there was nothing the league could do about it. The commissioner's frustration intensified because this pattern was not new. The tension between Clark and league leadership did not begin with media rights or off-season leagues. It began with silence. Throughout the season, Clark absorbed physical play that crossed from competition into hostility. Fouls that were not basketball plays. Contact that looked punitive. Fans noticed. Media noticed. The league office did not respond. The perception grew that Engelbert was unwilling to challenge veteran players or address behavior that threatened the league's most visible asset. That silence culminated in a disastrous interview. Asked directly about the growing toxicity surrounding Clark, Engelbert delivered a corporate response about rivalries and historical comparisons. She framed animosity as engagement. She likened the discourse to classic eras of the NBA. The reaction was immediate and brutal. The Players Association criticized her. Fans erupted. Media outlets abandoned neutrality. An apology followed, but it arrived too late. The damage was structural. Clark had learned a lesson. Protection would not come from the league. It would have to come from leverage. And NBC provided it. By aligning with the network, Clark secured something the commissioner could not counter. Institutional backing with financial consequences. At that moment, Engelbert lost her most important bargaining chip. Authority. The NBC alliance did not just amplify Clark. It insulated her. And the commissioner knew it. Because once a star is shielded by media partners, the league office becomes secondary. That realization marked the end of the old hierarchy. The NBC situation cannot be separated from the Olympic controversy, because that was the moment trust fully collapsed. When Caitlin Clark was left off the Team USA roster for Paris, the explanation was framed as basketball logic. Experience. Fit. Timing. But few believed that was the whole story. To many observers, it looked like gatekeeping. A message from the veteran class that stardom does not bypass tradition. Commissioner Engelbert publicly supported the decision, reinforcing the idea that Clark would have to wait her turn. That stance carried consequences far beyond the league. NBC, the Olympic broadcaster, understood exactly what was lost. Clark on that roster would have driven unprecedented global viewership. Casual fans. International audiences. Advertisers. By excluding her, the league's decision-makers effectively cost the network millions. That resentment did not disappear. It waited. When the WNBA season approached, NBC's response was clear. They would not allow the same mistake twice. Their coverage strategy became unapologetically Clark-centric. Prime slots. Promotional campaigns. Feature segments. The message was unmistakable. The network would protect its investment regardless of internal league politics. This put the commissioner in open conflict with her own broadcast partner. At the same time, locker room tensions escalated. Veteran players had spent months downplaying Clark's impact, suggesting hype would fade, claiming the league's growth was inevitable with or without her. The NBC deal destroyed that argument. Billions do not follow inevitability. They follow demand. The reality was now undeniable. Ratings spiked around Clark. Attendance followed Clark. Merchandise followed Clark. The market had chosen. Engelbert was caught between two forces she could not reconcile. A powerful players' association resistant to star favoritism and a corporate partner uninterested in egalitarian messaging. The commissioner's role had always been to balance interests. That balance was no longer possible. Economics had tilted the scale. And economics do not negotiate. The situation worsened as media dynamics shifted. Commentators and analysts who openly dismissed or criticized Clarke began facing consequences. The most visible example involved a respected former player whose on-air remarks consistently undermined Clarke's achievements. Backlash grew. Ratings data spoke. Eventually, she was quietly removed from a broadcast assignment. The message was unmistakable. Protect the product or step aside. For Engelbert, this represented another erosion of authority. The league traditionally shielded its legends. NBC did not. Their loyalty was to viewership. Anyone who threatened that would be sidelined. The commissioner preferred consensus. The network enforced results. That difference reshaped the ecosystem. Financial realities compounded the pressure. For decades, the WNBA operated at a loss, subsidized by the NBA. That changed rapidly with Clarke's arrival. Sold-out arenas became common. Jersey sales surged. Charter flights moved from impossible to inevitable. But Engelbert understood how fragile that transformation was. The league's newfound stability rested disproportionately on one player. If Clarke were injured, if she chose a different path, if she stepped away, the progress could evaporate. The NBC deal almost certainly included performance expectations tied to her presence. That gave Clarke unprecedented leverage. In traditional labor dynamics, employers dictate terms. Here, the employee sustained the system. Engelbert recognized the shift. She was no longer directing the league. She was maintaining conditions to keep Clarke satisfied. That realization was humiliating. It also explained the reported outbursts. Because power lost quietly is easier to accept than power lost visibly. Scheduling controversies added fuel. Early season matchups placed Clarke against elite teams with minimal rest. The optics were brutal. Many fans believed the league was testing her, forcing adjustment narratives. That strategy failed. Clarke endured. With NBC involved, those tactics would not survive. Networks demand optimization, rest, visibility, favorable windows. The commissioner's ability to engineer parity through scheduling evaporated. The calendar would now revolve around ratings priorities. And ratings meant Clarke. Engelbert's long-standing philosophy of collective equality was collapsing under market pressure. Each concession made to satisfy broadcasters reduced her control further. And the league office could feel it slipping away. Sponsors represented the final fracture. Major brands entered the WNBA with renewed enthusiasm, but their strategies were unmistakable. Campaigns centered on Caitlin Clarke. Shoe deals eclipsed league salaries. Endorsements operated independently of league initiatives. Sponsors began communicating directly with Clarke's representation. The commissioner was increasingly bypassed. That reality struck at the heart of her role. A commissioner exists to unify commercial interests under a league banner. When corporations treat the league as secondary, the office becomes ceremonial. Engelbert could feel that shift in real time. Each sponsorship announcement reinforced the same conclusion. Clarke's economic gravity outweighed institutional authority. Fan dynamics mirrored this transformation. The WNBA's traditional audience valued continuity and collective identity. The influx of Clarke's supporters altered that culture overnight. These new fans were not loyal to the league. They were loyal to her. They criticized officiating. They challenged league decisions. They demanded accountability. Social media amplified their influence. Every misstep by the commissioner triggered backlash. The NBC deal emboldened them. It validated their belief that Clarke was the league's core. Engelbert was now attempting to satisfy two incompatible constituencies. Legacy supporters resistant to change and newcomers financing growth. That balancing act was unsustainable. The league's handling of racial and toxicity narratives further complicated matters. Early criticism of Clark's treatment was deflected by reframing the discussion around fan behavior rather than on-court actions. That approach collapsed once NBC expanded the audience. Mainstream viewers would not accept obfuscation. Physical play bordering on hostility would become national news. Engelbert understood the implication. Increased scrutiny required enforcement. Enforcement meant disciplining veterans she had previously shielded. That reversal deepened internal resentment. The commissioner's authority eroded on all fronts simultaneously. Expansion pressures intensified the stress. New franchises meant higher expectations. More eyes. More capital. Rumors emerged that Clark's camp was considering future demands. Enhanced security. Travel standards. Officiating reforms. In earlier eras, such requests from a young player would have been dismissed. Now, they carried weight. Because dissatisfaction from Clark triggered immediate concern from broadcasters. NBC executives would not tolerate instability around their primary draw. Engelbert's position shifted from decision-maker to mediator. Her role resembled that of a middle manager protecting talent to satisfy superiors. Titles remained unchanged. Power did not. This transformation marked the definitive end of the league's previous structure. As the season approached, the commissioner faced a landscape she no longer controlled. The NBC announcement was not just a business milestone. It was a verdict. The old model had failed. The market demanded clarity. Star power over symmetry. Visibility over ideology. Caitlin Clark had secured leverage without confrontation. By aligning with media giants and rejecting structures that constrained her, she forced the league to adapt or fracture. Engelbert's frustration stemmed from recognition. She had attempted to manage change incrementally. The market accelerated it brutally. The result was a league reshaped by external forces. Big business does not negotiate sentiment. It follows returns. Caitlin Clark generated them. The commissioner could resist rhetorically. She could manage internally. But the outcome was set. Authority had migrated. The WNBA's future would orbit one player whether leadership approved or not. That realization explained the reported explosions. They were not about anger alone. They were about mourning lost control. The era of collective anonymity had ended. The era of identifiable power had begun. And the commissioner was no longer at the center of it. As we bring this to a close, the reality is impossible to ignore. The NBC deal did not just change television schedules, it exposed the end of the old WNBA power structure. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert is reportedly furious because the system she tried to protect no longer exists. She fought for balance, for sameness, for the idea that no one player should stand above the league. The market rejected that vision. Caitlin Clark, by securing the full weight of major media backing and walking away from projects designed to contain her, has shown where the true leverage lies. The chaos inside the front office is not confusion, it is recognition. This league has crossed a line it can never step back over. The WNBA is no longer operating on patience or ideology. It is operating on revenue and visibility. And in that environment, Caitlin Clark is the economy. The commissioner can push back, veterans can complain, and critics can argue culture, but the decision has already been made by money. This transformation will not happen quietly. It will happen on national broadcasts, in prime time, with Clark at the center of the screen. The final question is simple. Can Commissioner Engelbert adapt to a league where power follows the star, or will she be left behind by the shift already underway? And just as this chapter closes, quiet signals suggest another battle forming. That story comes next. Thanks for watching.